Behind me at the Bishop+Rook Minneapolis workshop is a left-hand drive Defender 110 200 Ti that will serve as a donor or a base for an upcoming presentation. When they come into the workshop, we have all of our team members come together and look at all the different component pieces of it, from chassis to bodywork to engine to electrical to all the different components of the interior. And then we start to build and formulate a plan as to say, this should be replaced, this should be preserved, these are the parts that we're going to need, and this is the direction that we want to take the project. Sometimes we'll start with a project in mind and then we'll match it to the vehicle. Other times we'll have a vehicle in mind and then we'll build it up from there as to say, here's the best approach to sort of save this vehicle and make sure it's ready for the next generation. So now I'm going to walk you through and show you roughly, kind of abbreviated version of that assessment, so you can sort of determine how you might view a donor vehicle, or how we would walk you through the process if you chose to build with us. All the different pieces that we look at, all the different components that make a good donor, as well as areas that we might shy away from. In this case, we're super happy with the vehicle, and this is definitely going to be a great build for us. And this is the type of build we like to do, where we have a vehicle that runs and drives, and then what we can do is take it apart, put it back together in the right condition, and preserve it for that next generation to come.
We have the entire team that's going to be working on the project, go through with each one of their particular areas, such as paint, body, mechanical, electrical, drivetrain, and we assess the condition, and then we start to build a build plan or a list, and that will include parts. It'll talk about the approach that we're going to take. Are we going to take it all the way down to the chassis? Are we replacing the chassis? Are we rebuilding axles? How are we going to approach it? In this case, this is a wonderful example of a vehicle that makes a great donor for restoration. You could, in theory, drive this just as it is for the rest of its life and be exceptionally happy. This is the kind of vehicle that I love. It's got character, it's got patina, it's got a nice faded paint job. But the nice thing about it is it's all here. Every bit and piece of it is here, which means that the previous owners had taken well care of it and just used it the way it should be. I'm not sure if I remember the miles on it. We'll go over on the other side. It is a left-hand drive, built in Sully Hall factory, like we mentioned on the introduction, but spent a lot of its time still in England. All the seats are here. The dash is in exceptional shape, and the nice thing about these preservation series is that when it's all there, we can clean it up, repair the items that need to be done, go through the wiring, make sure that that's not a big problem, and go from there. One of the things that we look for is bulkhead damage. So there's been some repairs here, but they've been to a pretty good standard. We'll likely take these footwells and cut them out and put some fresh metal. When I walk around to the driver's side, you'll see that it's actually even in better shape. There's some typical things that we find where the rubber door seals have gone bad, is that water gets stuck in this little tray here. There's a little channel and a door seal that runs underneath here. So the good news is that there's aftermarket companies that make those, so we can completely put brand new metal in there and then fix all the bracketry to make sure it's solid and that the water ingress issues won't continue to happen. A major problem with most trucks is that the doors rust out on the bottom. These ones are actually in really good shape overall. The door cards will need to be either replaced or refurbished, and we'll do that as part of the process on this one. We'll look in the back here. We've got a few bits that have kind of fallen apart during transit as we move things around, but the headliner is all in place. Aside from being a little bit dirty, it's not sagging, which means that we can reupholster it or clean it up, and that not only saves money but also time and preserves kind of the history of the vehicle. In terms of the walk around when we do these assessments, is that we'll determine the condition of all this interior trim, figure out whether or not the build requires it to be changed out or if it's in good shape. The rear door seems to be in really good condition as well. And the nice thing about trucks in England is that the number plate on the back will actually tell the history of the annual inspections. It's called an MOT. So if you're ever looking at a vehicle, it's pretty easy. Just do MOT history search, and you'll be able to bring up all the records and whether or not it passed or failed, and the history of it, and go from there. If you're looking at something to buy and they're obscuring the plate and it is an English-based vehicle, then that should give you a bit of caution. You can always ask for the registration number and see if it's been, on the road recently or if it's got a good history. So we'll go through and we'll look at The footwells on these ones as well, again, good shape, which means that they've sort of taken care of it. We did take it on the road a little bit earlier, and it runs and drives, no major gearbox issues. A lot of the times we'll rebuild those anyway. This project may be an automatic conversion, so that might not be an issue. Then this entire powertrain would be reserved for another project. We look, and it's hard to do with the camera, but we look at the entire chassis. And in this case, this one has a little bit of surface rust, which is totally fine. And in fact, sometimes that's a good thing, because we can scuff that back and then seal it with a rust converter, which will reharden that material and make it factory fresh. Aside from being a little bit faded, the bodywork is in pretty good shape. All these plastic surround pieces will all be replaced. There's been a funky repair here where you might not notice it right away, but it does bulge out quite a bit. So it's probably either somebody's dinged the panel on the backside or put a bunch of body filler in there. The good news is that we can replace all of those panels relatively easily as we pull the truck apart. And in this case, we'll end up with 2 front wings that are brand new. We'll go through and we'll upgrade all the lights, probably to LEDs, but kind of a traditional LED style. We've developed a crystal headlight lens for our Defender builds that make it look factory fresh, but provide the power output and the reliability of LEDs, which is nice. This is the motor on this one, like we mentioned, is a 200 TDI inline 4-cylinder turbo diesel, and at some point in time was a factory refresh or rebuild, and we know that both because it's got the gold block, but then also because we've got the paperwork that says the person spent 7,200 pounds to have it done back in the early 90s, which is a pretty good sign. One of the oddities that we look for sometimes is the turbo heat shield is never there. So when they are, we're usually pretty happy about it, because it means that somebody's just done a really good job of making sure that, you know, this thing was performing to its best potential. So, you know, a couple of the things that we'll walk around as we look at things, you know, a lot of the times these mirror arms will just be corroded due to age. We replace all that, all the seals that are here, the door seals, the window seals, the Alpine window seals, and then the rear windows. Those will all be pulled out and replaced. Even if they're in okay shape, we want to make sure that this thing is going to have a lifetime of better service. This is a case where these, they're called tub cappers. We'll replace these with a one-piece system because it eliminates this gap here, as well as any sort of potential water ingress issues. And it does look like there's a little bit of surface corrosion. So, you know, we'll take that off, maybe use that piece on, you know, one of our shop trucks, you know, if we need it, go from there. This one does have the unique ribbed roofline, which I actually like, especially for hauling stuff. It gives you a little bit of extra protection on the top. But that should give you an idea of kind of like what makes a really good donor, kind of how we go through the assessment process and figure it out from there.
So hopefully that gives you a better idea of some of the things that we look for in a really good donor for a Defender build. Sometimes we'll have an idea of a build in mind when we start. Sometimes we will start with the build process and then match it to a donor vehicle that's in the collection or coming into the collection or as part of a reserve system. But every vehicle starts in a condition like this, and we take care of all the rust, the corrosion, the mechanical issues, the cosmetic issues, all the seals, all the important things to make sure it's a running and driving vehicle. So it's a little bit different than if you just walk in someplace and buy a vehicle or go to eBay and buy something, is that there's a lot of opportunity to sort of customize along the way on parts and pieces that we're going to repair. Is having input from that build process early in it means that you get the vehicle that you've always wanted for about the same price as if you would just find it randomly on some online marketplace. So we love questions, we love comments, we love to be able to improve the process of these videos so that you get a better understanding of how we approach building a Defender, and we'll go from there. So thanks, and hopefully you guys have a good day.